Referees get a lot of abuse, fans scream at them, players surround them, managers pretend they've been personally victimised. It's part of the job. Usually though, it doesn't end in the execution of a human being. In 1989 Colombia, it did. On the 15th of November 1989, a match official named Alvaro Ortega was shot dead in the city of Medellin after a controversial decision he'd made weeks earlier. 8 days later, the entire Colombian league was cancelled. Alvaro Ortega wasn't a famous referee, he wasn't controversial, and there's no indication he was known for making dramatic or attention-seeking decisions. By all accounts, he was just doing his job, which is what makes what happened next so unsettling. Obviously, there's more to this than a dodgy offside call. This was Colombia in the 80s, a time when football, fast money, and organised crime had more crossovers than some modern midfielders' passing maps. In the autumn of 1989, Colombian football was already operating in a climate shaped by cartel influence, illegal betting and widespread violence. Matches carried consequences beyond the pitch and decisions made by officials could provoke serious reactions. On the 29th of October 1989, America de Cali defeated Independiente Medellin 3-2 at the Pascual Guerrera Stadium in Cali. During the match, a late goal from Medellin was disallowed. The decision was attributed to referee Alvaro Ortega. It immediately became controversial and drew strong reactions, particularly given reports that significant sums of money had been placed on the outcome. 19 days later, on the 15th of November, Ortega was appointed to officiate another match involving Independiente Medellin. The fixture took place in Medellin and ended 0-0. By that point, tension surrounding that earlier decision had not faded. Various reports and later investigations suggest that anger linked to that disallowed goal, combined with financial losses from betting, contributed to what followed. Some accounts have also linked the killing to individuals connected to organised crime, although no one has ever been convicted. After the match, Ortega left the stadium and returned to the city centre with fellow official Jesus Diaz. Accounts differ slightly in their exact details, but they agree on the core sequence of events. Later that evening, at around 9 PM, a car pulled up just outside the hotel. A gunman told Diaz to move aside and shot Ortega multiple times at close range. He was taken to hospital but died from his injuries. Jesus Diaz survived and later described the incident. Reports state that the attack was targeted and carried out shortly after the match had taken place. The impact on Colombian football was immediate. On the 22nd of October 1989, the Division Mayor de Football Colombiana, or de Mayor, cancelled the remainder of the season. No champion was declared. It remains the only unfinished top-flight season in the country's modern history. No one has ever been held accountable for the killing. The case remains unsolved. The most literal explanation is the most transactional. Somebody lost a fortune and wanted a scapegoat. Reports from the time say big bets had been placed on the match. One radio caller later claimed to be one of the killers and said they'd lost a lot of money because of Ortega's call. Several retrospectives repeat the figure of roughly 300 million pesos being wagered on the game, roughly equivalent to £194,000 sterling or $258,000 in today's money. This theory has simple appeal. If you're an illegal bookmaker or gambling syndicate, referees are the weak link. One call and your cash flow goes to someone else. Hiring hitmen to send a message is illegal, morally reprehensible, and frankly an awful way to run a betting company. But we're not here to question corporate morality. This is likely the most probable explanation, simply down to having the most evidence, even if said evidence isn't the strongest. The anonymous radio admission, contemporaneous press mentioning large bets, and the modus operandi of contracting killers. With that said, the identity of the paymasters was never established, and such a public execution would risk a massive blowback on whoever ordered it. I will admit this is probably the most unsatisfying explanation. If the motive was entirely due to loss of money, then Ortega's death is a brutal reminder that when illicit cash is large enough, human life becomes a mere roadblock. If you're after a more high-profile theory, the attention often turns to the cartel, more specifically Pablo Escobar. Escobar's relationship with football was well documented. Throughout the 1980s, he and other cartel figures invested heavily in the game, particularly in Medellin. Clubs such as Atlético Nacional were widely associated with cartel backing during this period, with money contributing to facilities, players and success on the pitch. Football also gave Escobar visibility and influence within the city at a time when he was building both power and public image. Accounts from later years, including statements attributed to former cartel members and reported in Colombian media, claim that Escobar followed the matches closely and took personal interest in results involving Medellin teams. The disallowed goal in the October 1989 match between America de Cali and Independiente Medellin is reportedly referenced in those accounts. The decision is described as provoking anger, particularly given reports that significant sums of money will link to the outcome. In those versions of events, the killing of Alvaro Ortega is presented as a direct consequence of that moment. There's circumstantial logic. If a local drug lord calls a ref's decision a robbery, and that said drug lord has power and access to killers, it's not a stretch to imagine him arranging retaliation. Escobar's networks definitely had the capacity, and Medellin's clubs had known links to narcotics-related cash, which blurred loyalties and made violent reprisals less improbable. With that said though, there's no hard court case proving Escobar issued the order. A lot of the story comes from later confessions or claims from convicted felons, which are useful but not ironclad. Memories and boasts can be self-serving. Also, naming Escobar as the mastermind is a tidy story. It fits a familiar narrative and gives an explanation that's easy to sell. Real life is often far messier. The final theory isn't one about a single individual, but about the Colombian football system at the time. In the 80s and early 90s, Colombian football was influenced by a network of interests that included clubs, betting operators and criminal organisations. That meant results weren't always just sporting outcomes, but could have had financial and strategic consequences. Under this theory, Ortega's death didn't just cost money in one match, it disrupted a system that relied on predictability. Betting becomes unstable if referees can make calls that significantly alter outcomes, and if betting becomes unstable, the entire structure that depends on it is at risk. Ortega isn't targeted because someone is furious in the moment. He's targeted in a much colder and more clinical way, simply just because his decision represents a threat to a wider operation. This theory would explain several things: why the attack was so controlled, why only Ortega was targeted, and why no one was ever clearly identified as responsible. If this were a system-level decision, then the people behind it were operating in a way that avoids exposure entirely. Of all the theories that have followed Alvaro Ortega's death, the one that still lingers the most is the one that points towards Pablo Escobar. Not because it's the easiest story to tell, but because it fits the atmosphere of the time so disturbingly well. This was a world where football could be pulled into a much darker orbit, where a result on a pitch could carry a weight far beyond the final whistle, and where the people with the most power did not need to answer to anyone. This is a story about a football official who walked into work and never came home. The truth behind his death has never been properly settled, and that uncertainty is exactly why people still talk about it. The theories are different, but the shadow hanging over the case has never really moved. This is a new series. If you'd like to see more, let me know by giving the video a like, and if you want to stick around, subscribing helps a lot too.